Hi there, and welcome to our special meeting of the General Conference. Many of you are meeting online today with us, and we're so grateful that you're joining with us for this important meeting. My name is Paul Fraser. I work at the International Office and function as the Multiply Network Coordinator, help oversee church multiplication with our 8 districts and church planters and leaders. And I'm one of 3 hosts. Now, today I'm just one. Our other 2 hosts will be joining us in May. But we want to just let you know that we want to welcome you. For those that will be online the whole time, we're going to have hosts 15 minutes before every session, just kind of outlining the session. We'll have some videos for you, as maybe we may have some interviews. We haven't totally figured it all out, but we'd love to have you join us early if you're going to be online. Did you know this is our first ever fully hybrid event, where I think 2 years ago it was just online and we were able to conduct our business. But this is the first time that we're actually fully online and in person. In fact, we're coming out of the Manitoba Northwestern Ontario District Conference, and what a great conference it was, and so many great things happened, and they got all their business done, I believe. But we got to see last night 3 people get ordained, and just incredible. What a great thing is to lay hands on them and pray, and it was just great to be together. I believe the Manitoba Northwestern Ontario District hasn't been together for 3 years, and wow, it was just really great to be with them all. But we are talking about, with this ordination thing, I don't remember my ordination message. I'll be honest, it's been a while. But I was surprised to hear, as I asked other people, do you remember the ordination message that you had? Like, who was the speaker and what did they speak on? And so I'd love for you to interact with me. Otherwise, it's just me 15 minutes of just giving you information. I'd love to hear from you. This is how the best way for you to communicate with me in live is for you to go into the Whova app, and there's a spot where you can actually click on message, and it'll open up kind of a new window, and then there's a kind of a new message icon that you'll want to click in the top right hand corner if on your phone, and then just message me. Look for Paul Fraser. By the way, this is going to be a helpful thing for you as you go through the conference. You're going to want to be able to maybe connect with other people. You don't have their cell number. This is a great way to learn how to message people. So if you remember your ordination message and who is speaking, just go ahead and message me. Or you can message me where you're tuning in from. We've got people that have already sent in things today, like Brian Nelms is 37 hours away by car. So, Brian, if you're driving the speed limit of 100 kilometers an hour, that's probably 3,700 kilometers. Thanks for tuning in today. Pastor Barry Risto is 21 hours and 30 minutes away. So, again, over 2,000. Claudette Perry from Newmarket, 2,000. Dwayne Collicutt so far, 3,068 kilometers. Dwayne, thanks for being accurate. That is you literally looked that up. We sent out a poll. And I think it came out this morning, and 244 of you responded on where you're tuning in from today. And what really is exciting is that there are 34 people that this is their first general conference. This is their first. So we want to welcome you. Wow, so great that you're here. 89 have said, yeah, we're tuning in from, 1 to 500 kilometers away, 5 to 100 to 2,000 kilometers away is 89. We have people that are tuning in right now, 4,000 kilometers away. There's 11 of you that are tuning in. Thanks so much. Jeremy Feller just sent me a message, 12,193 kilometers. Jeremy, right now you're winning. I don't know what you're winning. Maybe we'll do some competition for you, but we'll go with that. Some of you are writing, Tom Harbor saying, I don't remember my ordination, but I do know where it was, in West Kelowna. Good. Haley Armugan, I remember my ordination service, the message, who was there, the message, who was there, and the prophetic word that was spoken over me. Wow. That's so great. And so keep sending those in. I'm going to kind of go back and forth on those things. But if you do need to get some technical support, please don't message me. I have no idea on the technical side of things. So I want you to all just write this down or type it into your phone. If some technical issue comes up, do support@paoc.org. We'd also advise, because there is a lot of voting that is happening, that it'd be good for you to have multiple devices. So for example, I've got my phone going here, I've got my iPad, got the computer. So if you have multiple devices, one device I think would be best if you set it apart for voting. For those that are voting in today's general conference, you would have received a test email this morning and would have sent you to a link. And you can use that link again, and you probably see the test vote today. Some of you were deciding. I voted today. I don't think Winnipeg's going to win the Stanley Cup. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. So I'm not sure that question. Anyways, but you can see underneath it that there's a whole bunch of other resolutions that we're going to be dealing with. So we just encourage you. It's through our Simply Voting website that we're going to be doing this. And I believe there's like 25 resolutions. And so you can find where those resolutions are. If you go to the agenda, you'll see under the special meeting, there's like 25 subsessions. In there, those are the resolutions. I believe you have already received much communication about where to find them on our website in different places like that. One of the things that we're getting asked and want to just let you know about, and again, this would have come out in an email, but if you missed it, if you want to ask a question during the business session, we're not going to be having live questions, but you are able to, through the app, to ask your questions. And so this is what we would ask you to do. If you go to the additional resources on your homepage, you will see a button that says live email. That live email is actually going to open up a form page that you'll be able to fill out your name, your email, and then you're able to ask your question or make a comment. But what we would ask you is please let us know what resolution that you would like to speak to. If you already know that you're wanting to speak to a resolution, and I believe you can already start sending your questions in now, they won't deal with them, obviously, until that part of the business session happens. But we just want to let you know that that's how you do that. You go to the additional resources on the home screen, go to live email, and then that's going to open up a new window. One of the fun things about the Whova app, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, but we have a leaderboard. I don't know if you noticed, it's like who's the most engaged, and so we've got people that are involved. How you do that, you respond to questions, you set up polls, you make comments, and you do those things, and you get points. And Gary, I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, but you can all see him on your app there. I don't want to butcher your last name there, so you can all see him. He's at 55,000 points. Priscilla, you're right behind. Paul's at 45. Yeah, and then there's a big drop off. So you've got lots of time between now and May, the middle of May when we're talking about this, to go ahead and be involved in that. So just something fun that you might want to participate in. So for those of you that are just tuning in now, my name is Paul Fraser. I'm going to be your online host for today. We're so grateful that you're coming to our first ever hybrid event where we're fully online and fully in person. And we're grateful that you've taken the time to be with us today. You're able to send me messages and comment with us. There's polls that have been sent out. One of the polls that I made reference to earlier was how many general conferences have you been to online or in person? We're up to 35 people saying that this is their first ever general conference. So we're so grateful to you for joining us. 36, that's climbing. But what's surprising to me is we have 58 people that have already said we've gone to 6 or more. I think I've been to 4 or 5. I think there are some that have been upwards of 20, which is crazy. But for those, this is your first one. Congratulations. We're so glad that you're here. Kevin Mullen from North Battleford, because we did a poll. How far are you from Winnipeg today? There's most people, looks like the largest majority is 2,000 to 4,000 away. But Kevin Mullen in North Battleford is 921 kilometers away. Thanks for tuning in. Let me see. I think Jeremy Feller, you're still up there. Jeremy writes to me, winner, winner, chicken dinner. Hey, if you come to Edmonton, Jeremy, I will buy you a chicken dinner. That would be a lot of fun to hang out with you. Cheryl is saying, my ordination happened this past December. Dan DeSabatito spoke on addressing weariness in ministry. Wow. We were just talking about in the Manitoba Northwestern Ontario District Conference, the ordination service last night was fantastic. We got to see those that were ordained, 3 of them. We were just, wow, it was just a really exciting thing. And some people are just messaging in that this is where ordination, they remember the message and all the things that happened there. We're getting ready to go to our business session right away. So just a few quick things to let you know. If you need technical support, please go to support@PAOC.org. That's our email address, and someone will help you. Support@PAOC.org. We'd also advise that you would use multiple devices. So obviously being online, you're gonna be watching it on one screen, and then the vote's gonna come up. If you're using your same device and you're super tech handy, maybe you can split your screen. We suggest just have a separate device. Just have a separate device for voting. That'll make it easier for you. We have, I believe, like 25 resolutions that we're going to be working through. You would have received, most of you who had a voting member tag, or you're able to vote in this special general conference, you would have had a test email that was sent out this morning. You would have been asked, what do you think about Winnipeg winning the Stanley Cup? I'm not even sure they're making the playoffs. So, hey, maybe it was like 2023 or 8 or 2029, whatever. But no, I think it's for this year. And so that test email, just a fun way to get you engaged. But here's what it does. It shows you the resolutions that are going to be coming up. They're all listed there in the Simply Voting app. The last thing that Jeff Kelly here is helping me. He's my producer. He's just amazing. Jeff, thank you. He gives me the 2-minute sign, so I've got 2 more minutes to wrap things up. If you want to ask a question as it relates to our resolutions, if you go to the homepage and you see the additional resources section, there's a tab there that says live email. And so we'd like you to click on that live email. That's going to take you to a form, and you can fill out that form with your name. You can fill it out with your email address, and then you can ask a question or put your comment there. We've got a team of people that are going to be looking through all of these, sorting them and grouping them as it relates to the resolution. We'd ask you, though, please write down which resolution you are speaking to, and they'll be able to forward those on to the appropriate people at the appropriate time. And so we're grateful that you're able to join us from all over the world today to have this special general conference ahead of our fully in-person May conference. And we're so grateful that we're able to do this as a family, and we're able to do some business that is super important. And so we're excited about what's happening today, but we are really excited as well about what's going to happen in May when we're all back here together in a few short weeks for our general conference. And I think we're getting close to the time where we're going to transition over. Is that correct, Jeff? Are we getting close? Okay, well, keep sending your messages in, keep connecting. We want to have lots of engagement throughout, and just really, really grateful for all that all the tech people here at Calvary Community are doing. And our business session is coming up right now.
Thank you, Paul. And it's great to see some friends right here in Calvary Temple with us from the Manitoba Northwestern Ontario Conference that just concluded. And they're joining with you online as you all are involved with us electronically today. This is a very key time for us as a fellowship to come together both here on April 21st and then later in May 16th to 18th, and just together respond to what the Spirit is saying to us as churches, as leaders, as ministries. And this is an important day. This specially called General Conference is so that we can deal with some important items of business and have time to do so. After 4 years, there's been quite an accumulation of business involving resolutions. So we're very grateful that you've joined us here today. We're coming to you from Winnipeg, Calvary Temple. I'm going to declare this 2022 special meeting of the General Conference of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada officially convened in the city of Winnipeg, Manitoba, and I call this business session to order. Every chair's favorite moment, to hold the gavel that so many before the chair have held, and think of the legacy. Did you enjoy that? All right, there we go. This conference will be ruled by the General Constitution and bylaws of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, and our parliamentary procedures are governed by the Robert's Rules of Order. Our parliamentarians for this conference, and we're glad that two of them are able to be present with us, Phil Dorshuk and Craig Burton, are serving, and they're also tracking online with questions and so on that come in. And also online with us is Dr. Dave Demchuk, so we appreciate these folks assisting as parliamentarians. Ron's going to provide further instruction for those of you regarding how voting will be conducted today as we come to the various resolutions. Very appreciative for Ron Davis and the way he has moved in to provide stellar service to us as the interim General Secretary Treasurer. I would say this special meeting plus our General Conference coming up have given you a little work to do, sir. So we're glad we didn't let you get all bored and retired or anything like that. So thank you for shedding the light on the voting procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To prepare for voting, please go to your email inbox to open the email with the subject line, "Establish the Conference." If you don't see it there, you may want to check your junk mail folder, though I can't imagine any reason why an email from the International Office would end up in your junk mail. But nevertheless, you may check it if you can't find it. After the email opens, you'll have a link which takes you directly to the first ballot. Voting ballots allow you to choose your preferred language, ou ta langue préférée, just below the PAOC logo. It has been suggested for your best experience that you may want to use two different devices, one for the live stream and one for the voting. However, if you're comfortable using just one device, feel free to move back and forth between the live stream and the voting ballots at any time by choosing the appropriate tab on the top of your internet browser. To access each subsequent ballot, you can simply refresh your screen prior to voting, or you can also open the email that will be sent to your unique email address with the link to each subsequent ballot. Whatever you do, just do what is best for you as you take this opportunity to vote within the given time. Just as a reminder, voting privileges are only given to those who have registered prior to the cutoff date, which was originally 12 midnight on April 16th. If you did not receive a test vote, the good news is that you are successfully registered for our May conference. The unfortunate news is that you will not be able to vote in today's voting, having registered too late. Throughout the day, the ballots will be declared open by the chair and closed at the completion of the timer displayed on the live stream.
Thank you, Ron. We are using multi-resolution balloting for a number of these resolutions based on their natural connection within our Constitution and even the topics to some degree. So the ballots will be declared closed at the end of the timer on your screen. So go by that. We're conscious of some lag in the live stream, and so we've factored that in, but when your timer comes to an end on your screen, you know you have to have voted by then. We do have those who have been prepared to, again, facilitate any questions that arise through the app, going to the live email, and entering in. This is for delegates only, of course, similar to if you were at a live conference in the conference floor, coming to a mic per se to ask a question and so on. So, but if you think ahead of the resolutions that you've had access to through both the app and also through the credential holder portal, and there was a specific question you wanted to ask, you can go forward and mention that you're asking related to a resolution that's further along than where we're at the time. And that would actually help us to make sure that we're able to respond to questions. Some will be responded to directly if they're something that the parliamentarians can address, or there's a quick, clear answer. However, if it's something for the whole conference to engage, we'll be happy to bring that to you as chair. So we will begin with the first ballot to establish the voting bar and to recognize the conference committees. So if you would open up now your, and you will see or establish the voting bar and recognize conference committees. We do have a slide of the conference committees so that you're aware of the fact that our Resolutions Committee is being chaired by Ron Davis, and our National Administrators Committee, who work very closely with him, are the committee. Tellers and Ushers, we're grateful for David Kingston and his help, and he's chairing that along with the friends mentioned there on the screen. Minutes Review, our colleague David Blakely, along with Ruth Stagg, who's also serving as our recording secretary, and Elaine King. And Roster Committee, and you'll hear from Sharon shortly, along with Colleen. So I declare the ballot to establish the voting bar and recognize the conference committee is now open. Please proceed to cast your vote. Remember as you do so that as you show your vote, for instance in these two, you hit continue, and then you need to hit confirm, and then that is when your ballot is cast. Thanks for doing so. Well, the ballot is open and you're casting your votes. I would remind you that quorum, as established by the General Constitution and Bylaws and Bylaw 2.1, says shall consist of 2% of eligible voting members of the corporation registered at any meeting of the General Conference. So as we establish the voting bar, we will be able to confirm thereafter that we have a quorum. So we welcome you from wherever you're participating with us, online or in person here at CT. We welcome especially, and I've talked to some of our former officers, and I know they were going to be online today. We love them and their spouses, and we honor them, and so we especially welcome them. Some will be able to be on site with us in 4 weeks when we convene in person, and we look forward to greeting them at that time. This meeting's being facilitated by the good folks at Calvary Temple, and right away we just want to pause and give a warm appreciation to Calvary Temple, Pastor Bruce Martin. It's public knowledge that Pastor Bruce is transitioning as lead pastor here at Calvary Temple, and it's an interesting thing for Calvary Temple to go through a search process because they've only had 2 lead pastors in 69 years. So I had the privilege of meeting with their search chair the other morning, and it's like new territory. And I know they're consulting with others as well. So we pray God's blessing on Calvary Temple and are very grateful for their hospitality. And we celebrate God's faithfulness through Bruce and Miriam through the years. We are hosted by Manitoba, Northwestern Ontario District. I don't know when the invitation first came that they knew they'd be hosting 2 separate events and having to flex with us, but we were glad to tie in with their district conference, and now here we are. So Dan Murphy's going to come as the Assistant District Superintendent for Mission to bring greetings. And Dan, please open us in prayer. And of course, one of the things we're all praying for nationally and even internationally is for Manitoba Northwestern Ontario's District Superintendent, Andrew Porterfield, who's gone through a serious health matter. He's still receiving treatments for serious infection in his foot. I was able to visit with him and Joanne yesterday, and there is some turnaround, which we're very grateful for, but we want it to continue all the way through so that Andrew, they really want to be with us in 4 weeks' time. I think we can all pray along that lines, can't we? So Dan, thanks for bringing greetings, and also lead us in prayer. And if you'll remember Andrew as part of that prayer, that would be great.
Absolutely. It's great that we've been able to tie this on to the end of our conference, so some of our people were able to stay and be part of our live, bringing the live presence to this special meeting of the General Conference. But we also are looking forward to the great opportunity when in just a few weeks' time when we'll be able to host many of you here in our district and also here in the wonderful city of Winnipeg. And we have a great event planned on the Monday evening, and we hope that you'll be able to join us for that. But then throughout the time here in during the General Conference. We only get to do this about every 16 years, and so we count it an honor and a privilege, and we're really excited that we get to do it this year. And I do know Andrew and Joanne are hoping that they can possibly be part of that, and so we do want to pray for them. And so let's open this conference in prayer, and let's believe for God to move among us. So Lord, we thank you for today, the opportunity to meet across our nation and even around our world, oh God, to care for business, to pass resolutions, to do things, Lord God, to help us advance your kingdom. And so, Lord, we want to know your will, your purpose, your plan for us. And so, Lord, as we do the business, would you guide us? Would you lead us? Lord, I pray a special blessing upon our chair and our officers, oh God, and all those who are giving leadership today. Lord, I pray as well, specifically for Andrew. Lord, would you raise him up? Would you heal him, bring health and strength to his body, oh God, that they would be able to once again step into the roles which you have called them to serve. So give them strength, him and Joanne, oh God, during this healing journey. Lord, would you just continue to move among us and have your way, for we ask it in your precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Dan. And again, thank you to the district for hosting us. We're going to be putting some other members of the district to work, including James in just a moment, with our resolutions when we come to those. We will be waiting, of course, to bring you the results of a previous ballot before we move on to casting the next ballot of our procedural items. But we also want to take time along the way to show you some feature items that we have related to missions and ministry and what God's doing. Also, we're very grateful for sponsors and the part they play in helping us meet the budget of especially a double general conference special as well as our regular biennial. So we do want to honor sponsors as well. So here's a video clip for you celebrating, and then we'll be back with the voting results. Yes, and again, we do appreciate our sponsors, and Deeks is a principal affinity partner with us and have contributed a great deal to the ministry and mission of the PAOC, and we're grateful for that. Establishing the voting bar is carried 99.6%, and recognizing the conference committees is carried 99.2%. Apparently a couple people don't like a couple people. I don't know. But anyways, both of those are carried.
Testing the system.
Yes. We know that we do have a quorum as well from the numbers that voted. We now move on to our next two procedural items. Of course, they're important. They're first of all the approval of the agenda. So that agenda slide will be put before you related to the 7 items. It is, again, a specially called meeting of the General Conference, and therefore it has a little different agenda than the biennial as far as some of the items within it, but those are the main items for your approval. And we're now ready to also receive the roster report, and Sharon Thompson will be joining us on the platform shortly to bring that roster report. And Sharon has a way of appearing in many places all of a sudden, so. You'll just be patient with us for a moment. Podium's over there, Madame.
Sorry, we lost sound there.
This is one of the persons that works tirelessly for extra hours and hours and hours before an event like this takes place, and we honor you, Sharon. Thanks. And she worked very closely with our friend, Dr. Bill Griffin, who just recently passed away, so we're all going through a season of bereavement, but Sharon especially, so, and yet she continued to contribute to the planning of this conference. So Sharon, we really do appreciate that. God bless you.
Thank you. The roster report for the special meeting of the General Conference 2022 is as follows. There are 437 credential holders, 15 lay delegates, and 9 departmental leaders for a total roster of 457 people. Thank you.
And I believe we'll have a slide related to the roster report, will we? No? Sharon, I need you back. I'm just going to have that in my hand for a minute so I can reiterate it then, so at least verbally you all hear it clearly. Thank you. Just for the moment. Yeah. Thank you. So roster, so voting delegates as 437 credential holders, 15 lay delegates, 9 departmental leaders, 457, just to make sure everyone receives that clearly, including the chair. All right. So now we have both the approval of the agenda brought to you and now the roster report. So our parliamentarians will move in second that these two procedural items come before the floor, and we'll move to this motion. So if you'll refresh your screen, and the subject line should be conference procedural items. Again, to and Chair's got to remember to refresh his screen. That will be sent to you in a moment, and you'll be able to vote in related to the roster report as well as the conference agenda that was presented. So I'll declare this ballot open. Some may already find themselves voting. That's fine. And a reminder that after you hit continue, you will also have to hit confirm for the ballot to be registered. And the ballot will close when the countdown clock on your feed reads 0. We did, as general officers, along with the general executive, want to provide an explanation about why this special meeting of the General Conference has been called. And we realized as we came up to 2020 and our conference that was planned at Halifax had to change so radically and become an online conference where we were still able to do elections and do some of the business of the conference, but we did not do any of the resolutions that related to Constitution. And so we went, of course, towards 2022, recognizing that it's 4 years since we were able to address resolutions. They have accumulated, plus there were the resolutions leading up to 2020. Some of those are being addressed today. Some of them have a history of having been engaged over an extensive period of time, and so we wanted to allow for the fact that there was going to be a lot more constitutional work to be done, but yet when we gathered in person in May, we also wanted to still have a conference where we could be together as a fellowship, be together to hear from the Spirit and respond, and to know that side of what it means for us to come together as well as business. And so it was, the provision is there in our Constitution to call a special conference of our special meeting of the General Conference, and that is what we've done, and we appreciate you cooperating with this with us. These items today, as you will see, are important. Some of them, we're asked sometimes, well, how does the business and the resolutions arise that we find ourselves dealing with at a General Conference? First of all, I do want to honor the very active working groups that do address things that as we go through the business of being 1,200 disciple-making communities, 8 districts, international mission around the world, we begin to see where things could be streamlined, done differently, where there are needs for revision, where as we move forward with our vision and direction, there are things to be addressed. So there are items that come from our District Administrators Committee because they deal, along with their district superintendents and others, on the pragmatics of what it means to administrate Bylaw 10. We have some of those resolutions today. And so the Constitutional Review Committee actively engages with, for instance, the National Administrators Committee. There's also items that arise through some of the other working groups and committees, and our General Executive has been very motivated to engage regarding leadership development and the leadership pipeline, if you want to call it that we have so many clearly called and gifted people that are coming to be alongside of us, and we want to ensure that we address some of the ways that those people can be engaged with us. And so you'll see, for instance, one of those items that's been worked on for several years now by a working group is prior learning and prior experience. So then there's vision areas in our 2020 initiative. We wanted to enhance theological vitality and so on. So we have, of course, the Statement of Essential Truth resolution that will come in our May conference, and those arise from vision, direction. So there's multiple channels that lead to why we engage the resolutions we do. I realize some of them appear pretty perhaps mundane, but anyone who's served in leadership at national or district levels, international levels, know it's important to have clarity when it comes to some of these items. So all that to say, that's why we have 25 resolutions before you today, so that we can address them and deal with them. As soon as we have the procedural item ballot available, we will then move on into the next set of resolutions to do with meetings and committees. And as I'm giving my explanation, I'm looking at my friend Phil Dorshuk and realize I see Phil sitting at some tables as we're discussing some of these resolutions. Do you remember those? So. Thank you. And the conference procedural items have also been approved in favor, 99.6% conference agenda, 99.6% received the roster report. So we'll move forward with our business, and we now come to where resolutions will be presented. And we again would remind you that if you have any questions related to any of these resolutions, please identify that through the live email box on the app, and we'll be happy to consider them. We are receiving some, and we appreciate that. So We're putting our good friend James from the Manitoba Northwestern Ontario District Executive to work to read our resolutions, and we move to ballot 3, resolutions related to meetings and committees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolution 1, Article 9, Meetings of the General Conference. Whereas there is clarity in specifying the method of conducting a regular or special meeting of the General Conference in the General Constitution and bylaws. And whereas changes resulting from the COVID-19 global health pandemic have created the necessity for meeting over virtual or electronic means as an alternate to in-person meetings. And whereas these types of meetings have historically occurred in various contexts, be it resolved that Resolution 1 be approved as presented. Mr. Chair, I so move.
It is moved and it is seconded, and we will respond to any questions that have come in about that in just a moment. James, if you go on to Resolution 2.
Resolution 2, members present and voting. Whereas the General Constitution and bylaws permits the casting of ballots and voting electronically without an eligible voter being physically present, and whereas there are references to individuals required to be present and voting that infer the person must be present in person, and whereas the voting process can be clarified, be it resolved that Resolution 2 be approved as presented. Mr. Chair, I so move.
And there is a seconder. Again, no questions have come in related to that. We'll move on to Resolution number 3, related to attendance.
Resolution number 3, references to appearing in person. Whereas the General Constitution and bylaws may require individuals to attend or appear in person before a specified committee, and whereas attending or appearing before the specified committees may now occur electronically as well as in person, be it resolved that Resolution 3 be approved as presented. Mr. Chair, I so move.
Thank you, and it is seconded. Thank you. Again, not having received any questions along the lines of resolutions 1, 2, or 3, you do have a multi-resolution ballot presented to you. Ron, did you want to provide further explanation related to
I think for the most part, each of these resolutions are fairly self-explanatory. They come in a response to the rise of virtual business meetings, and Resolution 1 adds an additional paragraph to Article 9 of the General Constitution and bylaws to make provision for those kinds of meetings. Resolution 2 removes the term "in present" because there was some concern that the word "present" inferred physically present, so we adjusted the bylaw to make sure that we have backing for a virtual meeting, and we speak mostly of ballots being cast. And then the third one again addresses the in-person to other meetings other than the business meetings, could be hearings of any kind, and again removes the term "in person" so that it allows them to happen virtually as well.
Thank you. With that explanation, I believe we're prepared to move to casting our ballots for resolutions 1 to 3. So as you receive notification of that ballot being available and refresh your home screen, we will very shortly move on to casting our ballot number 3 that relates to the first 3 resolutions we have before us today. You can go ahead and cast now. confirm your ballot, and it's sent. We appreciate your participation with us. Our next ballot, which again is a multi-resolution ballot because it does relate to our international missions department. As chair, but also as general superintendent, I'm so grateful for the leadership of our international missions department, Murray Cornelius, the phenomenal lead team, and others that he has working with him, the regional directors. And they have led us in the leadership of the PAOC through a reimagining process related to our international mission. And it has led to the following resolutions. And so while we're waiting for the results of the previous ballot, I'm asking Murray and his team, they are going to take a few minutes, but I would like you to really zero in with us as you wrap up this resolutions 1, 2, and 3 voting. And we're going to have a presentation that will really inform you about international missions re-envisioning process and moving forward. So Murray, thank you very much, and away you go.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Chairman. In November of 2018, at the urging of the Spirit, in one of our regional directors' meetings, we determined to engage in a reevaluation process of our priorities, our focus, our strategies, our structure. And we took our time. We engaged widely with our global workers, with our international partners, and with you, our Canadian constituency. And the process included times of prayer. It included an appreciative inquiry, an analysis of the feedback, an engagement with focus groups, as well as repeated reporting to and reflection with the General Executive. We referred to this process as Reimagining International Missions. We've kept you updated along the way and have now concluded that journey. And our target was to establish what we called a base camp readiness by May of 2022. To use the metaphor of mountain climbing, base camp is essential to the successful summit of the mountain, and we anticipate a great season ahead of us of fulfilling God's mission to be His witnesses to the ends of the earth. The changes required were not major, but we believe that we have readied ourselves to be a very effective global mission. The constitutional changes that we're asking you to approve today are a few necessary outcomes of this collective journey. Before we consider them, we want to briefly summarize 9 changes, tweaks. They're not major changes that we have made through this exercise, and Jeff and Victoria are going to help me in this explanation. First, we sharpened our strategic focus. At the center of the strategic lens, we will increasingly focus on the 3.1 billion people that Joshua Project defines as the unreached, the least reached, those with little or no access to the gospel of Jesus Christ. In addition, we want to focus on the 3 billion people who live with little or no access to the basic necessities of life. We shared with you 2 promises and an impact statement that will shape our decision making, and we shared this at our last general conference. The desired impact that we want to see is this: we are a disciple-making, church-planting, leadership training movement. And so the establishment of self-sustaining, multiplying church movements and ministries that reflect the compassionate heart of Christ for their communities, their nation, and the world is the impact that we want to have around the world. In order to do that, we promise to passionately pursue every opportunity, use every means possible to give those with little or no access to the gospel of Jesus Christ an opportunity to hear the message of hope, to hear about Jesus, a message that offers them reconciliation with their God. And secondly, we promise to sensitively seek Christ-centered, holistic, and sustainable solutions to injustice, to poverty, and to help build communities of Jesus followers that reconcile the vulnerable and the marginalized with their God, their communities, and their fellow humankind. These two groups of people, the 3.1 billion and the 3 billion, they overlap for the most part. Many of the world's most marginalized and vulnerable people desperately need to hear the good news of Jesus Christ. Secondly, we have improved our pathways of collaboration, integration, and alignment with our integrated charities and our global programs. Our effectiveness is enhanced when our global workers, global partners, global programs, global charities, Erdo, Village of Hope, RAN, are all working collectively, collaboratively, to reach the lost and care for the marginalized and vulnerable.
Based upon our sharpened strategic focus of the least reached and the most vulnerable, we collaboratively made changes to our structures and our way of doing things to position our organization to serve global workers, international partners, and make greater impact in the days ahead. Let me highlight the next 5 of these changes. One of the themes that continued to surface, as already mentioned by Murray, was integration. This was also expressed in the redesign of our regions. This, our third change, was completed when we transitioned from 5 to 4 regions, with RAN functioning as a mechanism to serve all regions where a non-missionary identity is required. Having made this change, we are better able to strategically place workers in increasingly restricted and challenging contexts. Our 4 regions are Latin America and the Caribbean, led by Mark Hazard; Africa and the Middle East, led by Jeremy Feller; Peter Dove is the Regional Director for Asia, and Steve Herzog leads Eurasia. Fourthly, as a community of missional practitioners intent on lifelong learning, a formal structure to facilitate cross-regional learning was implemented shortly into the Reimagine journey. Almost 2 years after its launch, we have 4 communities of practice gathering global workers, staff, and international partners to discuss ideas, share resources, build relationship, pray together, and spark new initiatives. To date, we have 21 cohorts that have and continue to meet from our integrated charities. Fifthly, because of our commitment to being a strategically led organization, we are developing country strategy plans that capture the history, opportunities, and the strategic plan for the 85 countries in which we are engaged in God's mission around the world. It is an overarching strategy capturing what God is doing through multiple global workers, international partners, and ministry initiatives. The 6th item, our ascent from base camp to the kind of impact that we believe God is calling us to amongst the least reached and the most vulnerable has caused us to develop metrics against which we will hold ourselves as a community to account. We are believing for and celebrating disciples made, churches planted, and the catalyzing of church planting movements accomplished in holistic and sustainable ways around the world. Seventhly, we have a fantastic staff who have the privilege of serving our over 300 global workers. Throughout the last 2 years, we have experienced increased connection through creative online connections, like the regular hosting of 3 Zoom calls every second Friday to facilitate all the various time zones. One of the most recently implemented changes in Reimagine was the restructuring of the 32 staff to facilitate the integration of RAN and IM, as well as to permit the executive director greater freedom to advocate within Canada and around the world on behalf of the mission, global workers, and our international family. In this restructuring, Victoria and I have stepped into the 2 associate executive director roles, and we provide leadership to 6 functional teams led by experienced and competent directors. It's a delight to work with a team who is willing to embrace change so that we are able to continue in the mission of making disciples, particularly amongst the least reached and the most vulnerable. Victoria will share the final 2 transitions.
As we looked at our funding streams, wanted to assess what we could do there. In 2004, you will recall that we changed the way we funded missions. We moved from a centralized model to a model where now workers were responsible to raise their individual support. This significant shift resulted in our collective ability to expand what we were doing and also allowed our churches and donors to support the workers and projects that they were most aligned to. Each year, we have reported that the missions revenue has steadily increased. Taking this time has been allowing us to consider what can we do next. Instead of looking at the health of our finances in a decline, we thought this is an opportunity to be proactive and look for solutions that could support our long-term sustainability. So our 4 areas of proactive focus in terms of our fundraising was new opportunities. Over the past 2 years, we've increased our submissions to foundations, presenting major projects and work that needed additional support. In addition, we looked at our global worker training, the new global workers. The landscape of fundraising has significantly changed, but the call to invite people to participate in what God is doing around the world hasn't. And we want to ensure that we convey that message to our global workers as they fundraise. The advocacy for existing global workers. We have intentionally increased our relationship with our districts and thank the 8 districts for partnering together with their workers. We have seen our districts commission, support, and care for our workers in an incredible way, and we thank each and every one of them. And fourthly, we've increased our strategic engagement with existing donors. We've developed, cultivated, and look for ways for their relationship to grow. What does that mean? That means showing appreciation to the donors who care about our workers, who care about our partners. It means letting them know when there are changes on the field and ensuring that that is not just a transactional relationship, but it is deep and it is covered in prayer. In the face of a pandemic, we celebrate that our campaigns actually tripled. We saw the launch of 30 new workers. We were able to raise $500,000 in foundation funds alone. And last year, no global worker ended in a deficit. These are things that we say, thank you, Lord, for being with us every step of the way. But it's also our opportunity to thank you for partnering with our workers, for partnering with our international partners, and believing in what God is doing around the world. Our commitment is to continue to look for avenues of growth and ensure that we create new engagement opportunities. And the ninth piece that we were looking at is branding. The compilation of all of our reimagining work, we needed a brand that signified and conveyed this change. It's not about a color. It's actually about the messaging that reinforces all the input that Murray shared, that you contributed to, that our workers shared, that our donors spoke into, and ensuring that the brand conveys that the result is there. So today, we will look at a piece of this through the name change. But in May, we look forward to showing you what the brand will fully look like with all the logos, all the designs. But we want to celebrate where we are going and where we are headed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff and Victoria, and it's great to have a great team to work with. That's the background to the specific changes that we are asking you to make with regards to the Constitution, but let me address them very quickly. We are called to be workers with God and to join him in his mission of redemption in the world. The name change helps remind us that this is God's mission and we want to make his mission our priority. And the new name gives greater focus to our submission to the mission of God. Secondly, Mission Global, as our new name, also aligns with Mission Canada, a term, and it aligns with the term global worker that we have been using for about 12 years. Mission Global also aligns with our 2 global programs, Global Ed and Global Works, which lead the development of our leaders, and also Global Works gives focus to the marketplace and the use of business as platform to fulfill the mission of God. The concept of global not only emphasizes the vastness of our work, but also the holistic nature of our work and what we do. It encompasses all of our charities. Mission Global encompasses the whole. Erdo, RAN, Village of Hope, as well as Global Ed, Global Works, and our global workers work across the whole of the world and the whole of the world's needs. And so we believe that you expect us to collaborate, align, and integrate. You see us as one mission with many faces, and you expect the officer responsible to give leadership to a single integrated mission without bifurcating our understanding of holistic mission in this world. And so these changes are intended to help us to accomplish these goals, and I do have a question related to one of them, but I'll wait until the whereas statements have been read. But we humbly submit these constitutional changes to you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Murray, Jeff, and Victoria, and appreciate that initial overview. We'll return to the resolutions that are appropriate to that in just a moment, but I do want you to know that on ballot number 3, resolution number 1, meetings, 258 in favor, 3 opposed. Voting members in resolution 2, 261 in favor, 1 opposed. And resolution number 3, attendance in favor, 260 and 2 opposed. So those are carried. We now move to the reading of the resolutions related to international missions, the multi-resolutions that are there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolution number 4, International Missions Name Change. Whereas the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada has always had a heart to take the good news to the whole world, and whereas the practice has always been to participate as God's people, at God's invitation and command in his mission to redeem all of creation. And whereas our national mission focus adopted the name Mission Canada, and PAOC International Missions uses the term global worker to identify those sent at God's invitation and command to serve outside of Canada. And whereas our PAOC mission initiative could be paralleled nationally and globally in name, be it resolved that Resolution 4 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
And it is seconded, and we'll continue on to then the reading of resolution number 5.
Resolution number 5, International Missions, Recognition of Integrated Corporations and Charities. Whereas both Mission, Global, and our international office include ministries, programs, corporations, and charities created to increase our capacity and nimbleness to fulfill God's mission. And whereas the integration, alignment, collaboration, and accountability of these ministries, programs, corporations, and charities reflect our current practice and remains essential to fulfilling our mission. And whereas the existing of corporations and charities can be acknowledged where applicable in the general constitution and bylaws, be it resolved that resolution number 5 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
And it is seconded. No questions have come to us related to resolution 5, so we'll move on to resolution number 6.
Resolution number 6, Committees of the General Executive. Whereas the alignment of Mission Global and Mission Canada and the recognition of mission charities has affected the purpose and membership of related charities. Be it resolved that resolution number 6 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
It's moved, and there is a seconder. Thank you. We have had a question come to us on resolution number 6, and I believe Murray has that. It reads, the whereas section for this resolution is very brief, perhaps an explanation of reason recommending 2 PAONL reps, but 1 from ERDO. And I do give online greetings to Superintendent Terry Snow, who I know was going to be watching in on our business session today. But Murray, it's helpful for folks to understand the composition of the International Missions Committee. So.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The Mission Global Committee is obviously a governance body over all of international missions. And so we do want an ERDO representative there. We're very happy to have our PAONL Labrador partners represented there by both the General Superintendent and by the person who is responsible for missions. The question is, why is there only 1 ERDO rep? I think the best answer for me to give is actually ERDO is represented in other ways at that Mission Global Governance Committee. I am the chairman of ERDO. David Wells is on the board of ERDO. We have a district superintendent currently served by Michelle Bisayon, who is on the Mission Global Committee as a general executive member. So ERDO is represented there from its board at that governance body as well. In addition, when we have the Mission Global Committee, we bring in other director-level people from both Mission Global and from ERDO. And so ERDO not only has David Adcock at the Mission Global Committee, but the Director of International Programs is welcomed in as a participant, if not a voting member, to be able to give reports to the committee. So we feel that ERDO is very well represented in that way. I hope that gives clarity to our understanding of how we've comprised the committee.
And we do appreciate that question being asked, and thanks for that response, Murray. So Resolution 6 is moved and seconded, and with no further questions, we'll move to the reading of Resolution number 7.
Resolution number 7, Bylaw 8.4.4, Missions Advisory Committee. Whereas the Mission Advisory Committee has not been functional and there are multiple boards and consultants used by international missions to ensure engagement from our constituency. Be it resolved that Resolution number 7 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. And seconder, thank you. Been no questions related to Resolution 7, so we'll move on to Resolution number 8.
Resolution number 8, Bylaw 8.4.5, District Missions Representatives Committee. Whereas Bylaw 8.4.5 of the General Constitution and bylaws appear in Bylaw 8.2.1 as a duplicate, be it resolved that Resolution number 8 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. And we have a seconder. And thank you. No questions have come in related to Resolution 8. So that concludes the 5 resolutions being presented related to the International Missions Department, its name change, not window dressing, but with purpose, as was explained, and the various impacts in the structure as a result. So you now have those 5 resolutions on your ballot, and so this multi-resolution ballot for resolutions 4 to 8 will now be open. If you would go to your inbox and respond to vote on, does this relate to the ones we just?
Clarification, just a simple question.
Yeah, I think we can, we'll respond to this question. I think we can go ahead and vote since we've opened the ballot, but This is just helpful information for a question that's come on. We do want to respond to those who help broaden our understanding of
No, we won't call our global workers Mission Global workers. We'll just continue to call them global workers. We'll assume that that name will continue to work for us under the concept of our Mission Global. And we'll just stick with global workers. It's served us very well for the last 12 years or so. And I've got used to it. It's comforting. So there you go. I think we'll just stick with that. Thank you very much.
Someone's being quite creative out there.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, once you've indicated your vote on those 5 and you confirm, and the ballot will close based on the clock that is before you. We want you to take a moment and celebrate the good work of the Lord through our global mission, our Mission Global, our international mission. We're in this in-between time before we know what to call ourselves, you know, this 2 or 3 minute gap. Sort of like the already but not yet kingdom. So, let's watch this video and celebrate God's good work around the world.
3.1 billion. How long would it take you to count to that number? If you counted one number every second without breaks, without eating or sleeping, it would take you 98.3 years. According to the Joshua Project, that number represents the number of individuals without access to the gospel because the church in their community is so small or non-existent. There are places in the world where you could shake the hands of 100,000 people and not meet one believer. That is 3.1 billion individual names. 3.1 billion dreams, 3.1 billion hopes, 3.1 billion fears. Our God not only knows their names, their dreams, and their hopes, He knows the very number of hairs on each head. And His love is so great that He sent His own Son to die for them. In Acts 13, we see the first church, a local church in Antioch, a church just like yours, sending Paul and Barnabas out to do the work that God had prepared for them, to proclaim His word. Over the last 100 years, churches just like yours from all across Canada have sent over 3,000 Canadians to share the love of Christ to people all around the globe. This is your story. This is our story. Collectively, we have seen God plant over 50,000 churches. We've seen over 12 million people come to Christ. Over 35,000 pastors and leaders have been trained in the 54 colleges God has enabled us to establish. Today, there are over 13,000 local leaders preparing for ministry. Our workers have also fed the hungry. They've given water to the thirsty. They've cared for the widow, for the orphan, for the refugee, for the migrant, for the prisoner. The God that so loved the world wants us to continue to work with Him to bring good news to the 3.1 billion people that have little or no access to the gospel. Mums, dads, boys, and girls, all created in His image. God's call that has been central to who we are must continue to beat strong in the heart of every believer and every church. God wants people from every walk of life and vocation to respond to His call. What is God saying to you? Would you consider joining our team of committed global workers and go where God calls? Over the next 5 years, we want to send 100 new workers into God's harvest field. If God is calling you, we need you.
Say goodbye to that logo if, I know we're in the already not yet, but we'll know in a couple minutes the result of your ballot. And This fellowship is just to be honored for its tremendous impact globally, and we heard so clearly in the ordination service last night from Murray how we do it together. Nobody does it alone. None of our global workers do it alone. And I think, Murray, just for a brief moment before we give the results of the ballots, if you can just take a moment to highlight to our special conference the current response to Ukraine, Russia, the surrounding nations. I think that would be important to share as we consider our global mission.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really, the best way for me to be able to say how the church has responded is just say the church has stood up in the midst of this crisis. Let me start, first of all, there's numerous individual churches across Canada that have had their own personal direct connection with Ukraine in different ways. I could mention them by name, the church in Sarnia, the Montreal Church Evangel with Patty Miller, Soul Sanctuary right here in Winnipeg, Christian Life Assembly in Langley, and there are many more, I think Weka in Edmonton. They reached out responding directly through their own connections and I know the impact that they've had is very significant. The second response has been from those partner churches we have in neighboring countries, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Moldova, Romania. Those churches, those Pentecostal churches that we work with, were immediate in their response, their care, and they are accommodating and housing and feeding and responding to hundreds and thousands of refugees that have come across the border. But what they do is they go across the border with food for those that are staying, and they bring refugees back. We really have to recognize our partner churches in that part of the world. The third group is the partners that we work with, and Erdo has these networks and connections with the Swedish church, the Finnish church, the Australian church, with Convoy of Hope. And we have had a very collaborative effort of making sure that we're responding collectively. Fourthly, our global workers have been there on site. From Ed Dixon inside the country to Peter Pollack, who's been in Poland with Aaron Pilon, to Jen Jakob out of Romania going up. Sheldon and Anna Armitage have been coordinating the response from their local church in Bratislava. And of course, our regional director, Steve and Patty Herzog, not only are they there on the front lines, but they have a house full of refugees themselves in their home. I mean, that's the kind of response. And I just have to lastly say thank you to the many churches across Canada. The last number, and I'm sure it's already out of date, but the last number I'd received is that we have through Erdo, that doesn't consider all the other money that's gone directly, but that's come through Erdo and through the PAOC, now Mission Global International Missions, has been about $1.250 million. That's come from you folks, from across our nation, because the church stood up. So we can really say thank you very much to the people of the church for saying this is not just a crisis, this is a war that's being perpetrated against the Ukrainian people. I also want to comment, however, on the church in Russia. We need to be praying for the church in Russia. They will likely be coming under increased persecution over the next little while, and they are our brothers and sisters in Christ, and we have to love and care for them. We do want to report that our global workers have all had to evacuate from Russia. Only one of them two of them had a Russian passport, but they were married to non-Russians, and so it was very difficult for any non-Russian to remain in the country. So they have evacuated, and they're finding new ways to engage. I'll just give you one story very quickly. It just strikes me as a little bit ironic, but Alexei and Tanya Pankov found their way to Turkey. And in Turkey, there are all kinds of refugees, but in particular, about 1,000 children have been evacuated there. And Alexei and Tanya are in the midst of responding and caring for these Ukrainian children, children of war. And it just strikes me as ironic that here you have a Russian believer caring for Ukrainian children in Turkey, because the church is not confined by the politics of the world. We are citizens of heaven first, and that's where our loyalties lie. So thanks everybody for supporting us in what's happening over there. God bless.
We so deeply value our brothers and sisters globally and in places of war and conflict and those in persecution. So may our prayer ministries only intensify. I think we're all agreed on that. So thank you, Murray. The resolutions related to international missions, first of all, name change, resolution number 4, 222 in favor, 12 opposed. So that is carried. Resolution number 5, corporations and charities in favor, 226, opposed 7, so that is carried. Resolution number 6, committees of the General Executive in favor, 229, opposed 5, so that is carried. Missions Advisory Committee in favor, 229, opposed 5, so that is carried. And finally, resolution number 8, district missions representatives in favor, 228, opposed 6. So that is carried. So thank you again to Mission Global for your hard work, and we now know what name and logo to be using. All right, that's good. We are going to move to the 5th ballot, where we have resolutions related to voting qualifications and processes. Just before James reads those, we are having some folks indicating the challenge related to their ballots, and just to re-emphasize, absolutely the best way to be ready for the ballot once it is opened is to simply refresh on your page by hitting home. That way you can refresh whether your email appears quickly in your inbox. Some are finding it's going to junk after 2 or 3 times where it went into their inbox and now it's in, and they couldn't locate it there in time. So again, just to encourage you that the best way for most people is to refresh your voting page and in that way be ready for the ballot as it is open. I know I've had to go looking for a couple of my emails, and I followed my own advice, and by refreshing the page I was able to vote, so that's important. We move now to resolution number 9, asking James Schwab to come and read the whereases for us.
Resolution number 9, bylaw 12.9.1, district superintendent candidates. Whereas there may be a need to allow for suitable candidates for the position of district superintendent to be elected who have not been a member of their district for at least 2 years immediately prior to nomination. And whereas provision may be made for a district to amend its district constitution accordingly. Be it resolved that resolution number 9 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
It is moved, it's seconded. There's been no additional questions, so we will go on to resolution number 10.
Resolution number 10, General Executive Credentialed Member-at-Large Nominees, Date of Eligibility. Whereas clarification on the eligibility of candidates to be nominated for General Executive Credentialed Members at Large is needed to determine when the 2-year requirement prior to General Conference begins. And whereas the official nomination takes place at the General Conference, so that district candidates need only be eligible at the time of the General Conference. Be it resolved that Resolution 10 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
It is moved and seconded, and there have With no additional questions related to that, so we'll move on to resolution number 11.
Resolution number 11, General Executive Credentialed Member-at-Large Nominee Process. Whereas the process utilized by districts in the selection of a general executive credential holder member-at-large nominee may be reasonably shortened while still permitting a district conference its due process in the selection. And whereas the district conference is reasonably served with the presentation of 3 names from a district executive. And whereas it is recommended to drop the name ballot as well as the provision and additional credential holder nomination or nominated be eligible district conference voters from the selection process. Be it resolved that resolution number 11 be approved as permitted. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
And it is seconded. And having not received any questions, we'll go to resolution number 12.
Resolution number 12, local assemblies ceasing operations. Whereas it is beneficial to define the process in the event that a local assembly ceases operations as a congregation. Be it resolved that resolution number 12 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. And it is seconded. And again, there have been no questions. These tend to fall in the center of some of the General Secretary Treasurer's involvement with some of the different administration committees and so on. So brief comment, Ron, related to the background on these.
Yeah, my first comment would be that these resolutions come out of grassroots activities, circumstances, and occasions where the implementation of the General Constitution and Bylaw has been met with some challenges and some requirement to flex and maybe amend. So, for example, in resolution number 9, you have districts that are looking for greater access to candidates for the position of superintendent. So this addresses that. Resolution 10 would bring clarity to the timing requirements in the process of the district choosing their candidate for general executive credentialed member at large. There was some confusion as to the time frame of requiring them to be credentialed 2 years prior. When does the clock start ticking? Is it at the time that the district conference makes the choice, and with district conferences having at various times throughout the year, or does the clock start ticking back from the time of their being voted on at general conference? And as you can see, it brings greater clarity so that that 2-year period is from the time that they're voted on at the next general conference. In the other one, they're talking about the process. And again, the desire here was to streamline the process so that they could arrive at their choice of candidate. And finally, Resolution 12 addresses the absence in our Constitution of any percentage required for a church to cease operations, and so brings clarity to that statement.
So with that background, we're prepared to move to deal with the multi-resolution ballot number 5 related to voting qualifications and processes. So again, we look to refresh our online voting by app or on our laptop, and I've got mine, so that's a good sign. And the ballot's now open for you to cast your votes. You have until the countdown clock reaches 0 to cast your ballot in those 4 resolutions. Another resolution we wanted to put a focus on and allow for some explanation of that has gone through quite a journey, and including even a trial period with our districts related to prior learning assessment and prior experience assessment. And we will ask our General Secretary Treasurer Ron Davis to provide an overview of the work that's been done by this group. It's been done in consultation with other groups that relate to our education, that relate to our credentialing, and of course right through to the General Executive and open dialogue there. So there has also been questions received related, asking for explanation and some broadening of understanding. That's great. So Ron will pick up on that, and you may need to chat for 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Right, this is a big question. I'll try and keep it to 3, 4 minutes. This grows out of the phenomenon that we are seeing within our constituency, where we have a number of individuals coming to us seeking credentials with the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. We have been well served by our Bible colleges in preparing people for ministry. The traditional understanding of that preparation procedure has been to an individual to apply to their Bible college. It could be right out of high school, it could be later in their life. They go for 3, 4 years. There's a program of training that is prescribed for them. They follow that, they graduate from that. With the proper graduation and the right number of credits, they can apply for the licensed minister credential and then move on in a period of 2 or 3 years to be ordained with our fellowship. As I said, that process has served us well. Our colleges have done their very best to prepare people for ministry training. The challenge comes in some of our districts are now seeing a greater number of candidates seeking credentials that have not come to them by that traditional method. One of our districts sees a rate of as high as 50% of their credential candidates coming from other avenues of ministry training. Thus, there was a call and a request from the districts to broaden, shall we say, to expand, to look for other pathways that could be recognized and that would provide us with acceptable criteria for credentialing these individuals, ensuring that we have quality people in our churches, in our leadership, in our pulpits, and in our ministries. Ensuring that these people are set up to succeed in their ministry so that they are equipped with the tools necessary to be good stewards of the gift and the calling that God has given them. We have always had other means of achieving educational requirements. There's been correspondence course. There have been other programs of ministry training that have been accepted. But now we want to look beyond that and see if there's even greater ways that we can create avenues to ministry opportunities within the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. So a number of months ago, even before I began in this role, the Credential Standards Committee, and along, I believe, with the help of the Educational Standards Committee, started looking at a program called PLAR, Previous Learning Assessment Recognition. And they began by establishing outcomes, desired outcomes for the candidate who was to be credentialed. They set the criteria for those outcomes and set the educational requirements for those outcomes. We're talking here about prior learning assessment. So are there other means of learning? Are there other avenues of learning that would help us achieve the same outcomes that we have traditionally looked for in our ministry leadership? I want to give credit here where it's due. Rob Lindeman has done excellent work in this area in leading the various committees and leading the study and the research in this whole area and preparing the documentation, preparing the strategy, preparing the process, the grids, and all of the things necessary to ensure that we achieve those outcomes. So for example, we right now are in the midst of a test period with PLAR, where we are taking individuals who we deem acceptable for this kind of process. We're examining the education and the prior learning that they have already received. We're seeing if that helps achieve the outcomes that we're looking for, and then we can give acceptability to that so that their learning is recognized. There's a whole assessment process. There's a regional registrar that walks with them, that receives transcripts, that assesses those transcripts, that determines the level of education that they've already received and applies it to the outcomes desired. As they work through that material, as they show competency in those areas, then they are determined to have achieved the acceptable means for credentialing. A good example would be if an individual has not taken homiletics within a PAOC institution, but they have taken homiletics at another seminary or another Bible college. There would be an assessment of that homiletics course, an assessment of that learning experience, and see if it could be recognized as acceptable to the credentialing requirement. Part of our traditional credentialing process is, historically, we have required what I've fondly referred to as the H2P3. Homiletics and hermeneutics, pneumatology, pastoral theology, and Pentecostal history. We've always required those to be done within a PAOC institution. But this looks at an opportunity for these individuals to achieve the outcomes of those courses and find ways, if there are ways possible, to have achieved that learning through another pathway. That's PLAR, that's the prior learning assessment recognition. More recently, we have been looking at a mechanism of PAIR, prior experience assessment recognition. Now, we're not getting all of the fruit of the Spirit in here, but we've got one. And so prior experience assessment is where we take individuals, and these are probably unique circumstances. If I take a look at what might be the ideal candidate for a PAIR assessment, this individual is probably at a minimum in their early 30s. They have a proven ministry, either in a lead pastor or another pastoral capacity, a global worker or an international ministry. It's been over a period of at least maybe 10 years. They may be individuals with a non-theological background, and their experience may not be limited to PAOC context. But again, we establish outcomes, and we're just in the early stages of working through this, and we'll be seeking input from our various districts and others who would help us, particularly on the Credential Standards Committee, to determine what experiences can provide that candidate with what would be acceptable to the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada in terms of ministry leadership. So it's not a way for people to circumvent the current Bible college experience or seminary experience. It's not a way for them to get a quick and easy credential with the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. There are specific outcomes that we're looking for. There are specific processes for them to follow. There is an assessment, there is an evaluation. There are qualified people who are doing these evaluations and assessments, and we want to ensure, as I said earlier, that we have candidates who will be successful, and we have candidates who will lead with integrity, good foundational theology, and an experience in ministry and experience in life that will help them successfully lead congregations and ministries within the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. We did have one question come with regard to this resolution, and let me read it for you and then respond maybe a little further to what I've already said. Resolution number 13, insofar as we minister in a world increasingly dominated by leftist and woke ideologies on one side, wild conspiracy theories on another, and innumerable self-proclaimed experts authoritatively spouting who knows what on social media, I wonder how this resolution addresses concretely how and where essential theological and worldview formation is taking place or even measured when giving credentials based on past recognition. Acknowledging that we need to identify alternative pathways to credentials other than requiring full Bible college or seminary degrees or diplomas, and acknowledging the importance of recognizing prior learning experience, PLAR, as do many or all of our theological colleges do already. I ask how, when bypassing formal education, the Assembly means specifically to ensure we are still requiring the pastors and leaders of our churches will be equipped with essential ministry skills beyond simply in work-related or life skills such as corporate management, and not simply create a non-educated pastorate. Specifically, the resolution is very vague and open-ended when using PLAR to identify qualifications as established by the Credential Standards Committee. Anyone working with PLAR knows it is a very deliberate and involved process. And what mechanisms does the Credential Standards Committee intend to use to measure essential pastoral qualifications that are being bypassed by this resolution, including Christian worldview formation, theological awareness, exegetical skills to rightly divide God's word, and communication or preaching skills? It's submitted by a member of our college community. The concern of the writer of that question resonates with us. As I said, we're very concerned that these people are set up to be successful. These people, and you can define that term successful, but that they minister with effectiveness, that they are allowed to have the tools and be equipped in a way that's going to help them minister effectively. There's no intent in this, from my perspective, and I can address it as someone who's come into the process part way and almost a third observer. I see no intent in this process to circumvent any kind of theological training, any kind of requirement that they be fully and well equipped. The Credential Standards Committee has done a great job of, as I said, establishing the outcomes that they're looking for. They've done a great job of creating the expectations of what kind of training they would need to have. The reality is that we have people coming to us from other countries to address multicultural congregations within Canada, and they have had ministry experience, they have had ministry training in contexts other than the PAOC context. There are other good training institutions in the world. There are other good training experiences within the world. And while we have done a good job with the PAOC, we don't want to set ourselves as being exclusive in that category. So we're looking at alternatives. And the suggestion was that maybe the resolution is vague. I'd agree with that. It is deliberately so to provide the greatest flexibility to the Credential Standards Committee and the Education Standards Committee to determine policy, practices, and implementation that's going to achieve the outcomes that have been established. I'm not sure there's anything more I can say there. I recognize the concern of the individual and the question, and I appreciate it. And I can assure that individual that the Credential Standard Committee has that same concern and wants to ensure that our churches are well served and that our ministries are well served.
So we wanted you to have that overview, but we will return to then actually addressing resolution 13 in just a moment, but I do need to give you the results from resolution number 9, district superintendent candidates. 247 voted in favor, 24 opposed. It is carried. General executive members at large, eligibility date, 264 in favor, 6 opposed. It is carried. Resolution 11, general executive member at large, process in favor, 263, opposed 8. And resolution number 12, local assemblies ceasing operation, in favor, 264, opposed 8. So it is carried. So resolutions 9, 10, 11, and 12 were all carried. And we will now hear the official reading of Resolution 13 related to licensed minister qualifications and specifically referred to as PLAR and PAIR. Thank you, James.
Resolution number 13, Bylaw 10, Licensed Minister Qualifications and Ministry Preparation Requirement. Whereas there are ministry leaders that can demonstrate an effective ministry but do not qualify for PAOC credentials leading to ordination under the current academic requirements set by the Credential Standards Committee, which assume a formal education route as per the General Constitution and bylaws. And whereas prior learning assessment recognition, or PLAR, is a concept and process used in the post-secondary educational sector that could be an optional pathway for assessing certain candidates for PAOC ministerial credentials. And whereas prior learning for ministry can be acquired informally through church, parachurch work, volunteering, and other life experiences that are relevant to credentialed ministry. And whereas the PLAR Working Group, the Credentials Standard Committee, the National Administrators Committee, in consultation with the Education Standards Committee and the Superintendent's Committee, have recommended to the General Executive Committee that provision be made in the General Constitution and bylaws to permit prior learning and experience assessments as pathways for evaluating certain candidates for licensed ministerial credentials with PAOC. Be it resolved that Resolution 13 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
It's moved and seconded. Explanation quite extensively, and response has already taken place. For clarity, this comes to you from the General Executive following input from different committees and groups working, especially credential standards. They were asked by the General Executive actually to address this in greater depth prior to coming as a motion. Along the way, educational standards and others also have input, but the resolution itself eventually does come through the channel of the General Executive, because of course it does deal with credentialing and bylaw 10. So we invite you to refresh your ballot. We will open the ballot, and some may have already taken opportunity to begin to vote. The clock will begin to run on your stream, and thank you. Only the one resolution, because we did want this to have a good hearing and have some time for thought, so you may cast your ballot and of course hit confirm. And we seem to have more people that are again having success with refreshing and being able to vote, and that brings joy to our hearts. So thanks for casting that ballot at this time.
Everything here is so connected and so together. It's like as if everything combines together into this beautiful harmony. like Jews and Arabs and tourists from all over the world, like Chinese and Australians, all together, something that you cannot find anywhere else.
When we walk in Jerusalem, we feel the story comes alive. 2,000 years ago, the people there walked there around, Jesus walks there around, and now we walk around here. It's very special.
I feel the sky is a bit closer. I feel that it's not just a story from the history books, but it's real and it's alive, and I'm a part of it.
Did you know that there are 3,000 people groups with no access to the gospel at all? No churches, no disciples, no witness. And there are over 3 billion people living on less than $3 per day.
Compare that with a church in Canada for every 1,250 people, virtually all living together with plenty to spare.
Are you passionate about following Jesus, but are yet to discover the purpose he has for your life?
Are you looking for a globally engaged community that will help you dream, explore, and prepare? Then launch you into effective Christian service following Jesus in a global setting.
God has made you for his purposes, and that means you have something incredible to give, something that can change the lives of thousands of others. And Jesus is asking, will you follow me?
We'll help you understand the dream, explore the possibilities, prepare for strategic opportunity, and launch you into a lifetime of effective service.
So give us a call, go online, and click a button. We'll get behind you, we'll support you, and stick with you through your journey. An expectant world is waiting for someone just like you.
Well, makes you want to sign up, doesn't it? And we do appreciate another sponsor, a major sponsor for our both our special meeting of the General Conference and also then our biennial conference is the Israel government and their contribution. I would note that as part of our time together on May 16th, as we are welcomed by the Manitoba and Northwestern Ontario District at a reception at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, that it is quite an elaborate world-class display. It does deal with human rights, and of course there's the many nuances and aspects of that, some of where we may or may not go, and so it's an invigorating place to go and engage the different perspectives on human rights and so on. But primarily it'd be a welcome and a chance to reconnect with one another. But I work very specifically with one group that is responding from a Judeo-Christian perspective related to anti-Semitism, and they will be presenting that night a feature presentation that police services across Canada present, as well as school boards and so on, entitled The Power of One. So we just honor the Jewish community, and we appreciate the Israel government. Of course, they love that the Christian community does travel to Israel. Many of you have done so and realize how it makes so many things in the scripture come alive, so appreciation along that lines. We do have the results for resolution number 13, licensed minister qualifications, and specifically related to PLAR and PAIR. In favor were 236, opposed 54. 2/3 needed for constitutional change that is achieved, and so the resolution passes. And there's more journey to go, more work to be done. The next 6 resolutions pertain to credential terminology and processes. This would go back to what Ron has stated earlier, where we engage through our regular involvements at district and national levels and begin to realize that some terminology should be changed, or we could be assisted by other clarity. And so I'm going to ask James to come and present resolutions 14 all the way through to 19. Thank you, James.
Resolution number 14, Discipline and Restoration Terminology. Whereas the General Constitution and bylaws and local church constitution and bylaws use to the adjective brotherly to characterize the words love and kindness in the context of restoration as it relates to discipline. And whereas the objective of being Christian could more aptly describe this, be it resolved that resolution number 14 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. It is moved. It is seconded. There have been no questions submitted along that, so we'll move on to resolution 15, James.
Resolution number 15, non-renewed credentials. Whereas there is a clearly stated process for all credential holders to renew their credential membership annually, and whereas PAOC makes every reasonable effort to contact and notify the credential holder prior to termination of the credential. And whereas credential holders who do not renew their credential on an annual basis will have their credential file closed and the credential will be terminated. Be it resolved that resolution number 15 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
It is moved and I believe also seconded. Thank you. And no questions received related to that resolution, so we'll move on to the next one.
Resolution number 16, administering discipline terminology. Whereas the process and timeline in the disciplinary procedure as delineated through the bylaw 10.6, discipline of the General Constitution and bylaws that must be adhered to is progressive in nature. And whereas there are criteria set out in the General Constitution and bylaws outlining the causes of disciplinary action, bylaw 10.6.2. And whereas the district superintendent or executive director for international missions may also exercise discretion concerning whether or not to commence an official investigation and shall have the right to determine restrictions of ministerial activities, bylaw 10.6.5. And whereas alleged violations under the General Constitution and bylaws, bylaw 10.6.2, shall be investigated, bylaw 10.6.6. And whereas it is expected that any actions in a disciplinary procedure be administered with gentleness as referenced in Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. Be it resolved that resolution number 16 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
It is seconded, related to discipline terminology. No additional comments were received, so we'll move on to resolution number 17.
Resolution number 17, bylaw 10.6.4, preparation of an allegation. Whereas allegations of a sensitive and or painful nature may arise where it is not suitable for a complainant to write the allegation himself or herself as stated in bylaw 10.6.4, and whereas it may be advised for the district superintendent or executive director for international missions to prepare and or assist in preparing the allegations rather than putting the primary and sole responsibility on the complainant. Be it resolved that Resolution 17 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Resolution 17 is moved and it is seconded. And no questions received, comments, so we'll move on to Resolution 18.
Resolution number 18, accused credential holder terminology. Whereas the terminology currently used in a disciplinary procedure described in Bylaw 10 of the General Constitution and bylaws or Bylaw 6 of the Local Church Constitution and bylaws that refer to an accused credential holder or accused local church member is better stated as the respondent in a complaint. And whereas the terminology or the term accused may infer culpability. And whereas the respondent credential holder or local church member is considered innocent until proven guilty, be it resolved that Resolution 18 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you, and it is seconded. And with no comments or questions, we move on to Resolution 19.
Resolution number 19, Bylaw 10.6.6.6, Presumption of Innocence. Whereas an investigation that occurs, as stated in Bylaw 10.6, discipline is not to determine the guilt or innocence of the credential holder. And whereas the principles of natural justice include a presumption of innocence until guilt is established. Be it resolved that Resolution number 19 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
It is seconded. So we have Resolutions 14 through 19 moved and seconded. And we'll move to voting on it in just a moment, and Ron has a couple background comments related to those resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolution 14 is fairly self-explanatory. Our sisters can administer discipline with as much love and kindness as the brothers can, so we want to include them. Some of the resolutions with regard to terminology around discipline, allegations, the next number of resolutions, a lot of that came out of the work of our late David Hazard, who did his doctor of ministry dissertation on that particular topic and really contributed significantly to the discipline process that we now have in place. And so these are recommendations that come out of that. Again, Resolution 15 is just to clarify that this one isn't necessarily discipline, but there was kind of a fuzziness when we talked about non-renewed credential. When you don't renew a credential, you don't have a credential. So you can't talk about a non-renewed credential, you talk about a terminated credential. I want you to be reassured that we are not terminating the individual, just the credential. And the other items then are the discipline terminology. So Resolution 16 provides terminology that's more in line with Galatians 6:1, as we said, and doesn't set out requirements that could be difficult to meet. Resolution 17 permits allegations to be prepared by a designate of the district superintendent, so he's not the only individual that has to prepare those allegations. Resolution 18, the term accused is removed and replaced so that there's not an inference of presumption of guilt. And then Resolution 19 follows that same line, the ideas of natural justice being clarified within our discipline process. That's it.
All right. Again, lots of engagement over the last 4 years in places like Bylaw 10 and so on. So we have Ballot 7 before you, resolutions 14 through 19. The ballot is now available for your vote, and please take the opportunity now to indicate your vote related to resolutions 14 through 19. That ballot will remain open to you with its multiple resolutions until such time as the countdown clock disappears, and we'll have that report back to you very shortly. Another resolution today that we have put a fair deal of emphasis upon even prior to our time together today is work that's been done over the last several years. Resolution number 20 related to abuse of power or authority is not a flavor of the month resolution. It has been strongly engaged by our leadership for quite an extended period of time now. Ron gave some sense of that in the video that was made available to our constituency, but I'm going to ask him now, prior to us bringing this onto the conference floor and for any discussion or questions that have been received, just to again highlight some of the background related to this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just before I make my comments, I should beg the forgiveness of the House on the last question that was raised with regard to resolution number 13. I neglected to indicate who was the originator of that question, and we have said that just the same as if we were here in person, a person would stand, identify themselves and their place of ministry, and we've neglected to do that on your behalf, so we apologize. The last question did come from Dr. Jeremy Martini, who is president of Horizon College and Seminary, so as we were very confident that you're very knowledgeable about the issue and that's in this situation, and we're very pleased to receive that question. The whole matter of abuse of power, as our chairman alluded to, and even in his opening comments, there are a number of these resolutions that have been in the works and were prepared for our 2020 conference, so they go back to a period from 2018 on. And this is one of the ones that has been worked on specifically with regard to this change in our Constitution since 2018 and prior. In the video I referred to even the 2010 work that was done on the working paper with regard to biblical authority. I don't know that I have received the kind of response that we have received to this video that has gone out to our constituency. If you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to do so. The ones who participated in it did such an excellent job. A task group was formed by the General Executive to explore this topic. They were mandated to simply determine the level of awareness, determine the context of the subject matter, to help bring definition to it. There still remains a lot of work to be done. There will be recommendations that are brought to the General Executive. There'll be recommendations surrounding how do we address this, how do we respond to the passionate response that we have gotten to this video. And really that's what it is. It's amazing the number of people who have identified with this topic and said, thank you. Some of them even with tears saying, thank you, finally, I'm hearing somebody. So there's a passionate response out there. Now, that passion can go from one extreme to another. There can be those who are simply saying, well, you're just responding to this woke generation and the recent incidents that have taken place in church leadership and or in other world situations. But there's others who would dismiss it, simply say, well, listen, we've got a lot of whiners out there who are simply having problems in HR and working with those who are in positions of authority over them. Somewhere in the middle, there are a number of people who are hurting. Somewhere in the middle, there are people who have experienced things that were not done in the kindness and gentleness of stewarding the gift of leadership that we have been called to do and called to exercise. Those are the people that we want to hear from. Those are the people that we want to help as much as we can. But at this point, all we have is the working group, their work of discovery, their work of bringing definition, context, and that you saw in the video. And if you listen to the latter part of the video, you'll know that they raised a lot more questions than they answered. That's the next step of the work to be done. How do we go about this? How do we hold people accountable to those who are raising allegations of abuse of power? How do we hold those who are being the ones targeting others with abuse of power? How do we provide safe places for people to talk about this? How do we provide assistance in coming alongside people to determine whether it is indeed a misuse of power or an abuse of power, or whether it is just a matter of a conflict of personal values? What is going on here? These are all mechanisms that will have to be set in place. We have opened the question now. We have heard from a number of people, and we have also heard from those in leadership who would like us to see us move cautiously in this area so that we don't run into extreme the other way. We're hearing there's the possibility for both those extremes, and we recognize that and we hear that, but we also recognize that there's a great number of people in between those extremes who need help, who need to be heard, who need healing, whether it be a perpetrator of abuse or whether it's being one who has been the target of abuse. You'll notice I never use the word victim. I don't want, my concern is with using the word victim, that we bring about a context where there is no hope and there is no help. I want us to create a situation, I want us to create mechanisms, I want us to create an environment, create a culture where there is hope and where there is help. We don't want these people feeling that the only alternative for them is to either go ballistic or be quiet and go away. Those are the two extremes that have existed, and we don't want that in the future. So this group has done an excellent job. We have qualified people on it, but it's just, as I said, a working group. It will be up to the general executive to determine next steps. Do we have a standing committee? Do we have an outside third-party group that helps us? Do we do an analysis of our own systems and our own processes? Do we, and the questions go on and on. We are not at the point where we can start receiving people's stories. They are real, they are hurtful, they are waiting to be told, but we're not at the point there where we can receive them. We're not sure who would receive them at this point. That's for the general executive to determine. So there's a lot of unanswered questions. And I apologize to those for whom we have opened old wounds. Our intent was not to hurt you. Our intent was not to bring new things to light that maybe you had suppressed and felt that you'd gotten rid of. But our intent is to provide a culture among the family of Pentecostal assemblies where people can feel that they can be heard, they can be received in a way that recognizes their hurt, and they can find healing and hope and help. We do have one question that was submitted, and it's probably exemplary of a number of people out there, and it's probably not the only one that would express it this way. It comes to us from one of our pastors in British Columbia, Mike McIntyre. He says, "Let me start by saying I've been the victim of this kind of abuse myself at different times since the beginning of my training for the ministry almost 40 years ago. In the arena of unintended consequences, this legislation seems potentially to be particularly susceptible to abuse. In your preamble to the resolution, you quoted the saying, 'Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.' My question is, what mechanisms are proposed with this legislation to make it applicable to those who hold the most power in the fellowship and who would exercise that authority?" A couple of points of clarification. I didn't use that quote in the preamble of the resolution. I did in probably the preamble of the e-blast that went out for directing people to the video. I'm not sure, Mike, we'd have to chat to see where you see the particular susceptibility to abuse. And in terms of what mechanisms, as I said, that's yet to be determined. We have clarity within the Constitution right now that all credential holders, regardless of the position they hold in the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, are accountable to the credential standards that we have outlined. They are accountable to the bylaws and to the policies and to the declarations that we have made in terms of personal integrity and personal responsibility. So regardless of what situation or what position they may hold, they are accountable to those standards. I wish I could tell you more. I wish we had fleshed this out more. But right now, the resolution simply takes the assumption of dictatorial authority, moves it out of one section of the bylaws, and puts the words abuse of power under moral failure along with several other ones. We have work yet to be done. And the General Executive will receive the report, will receive the recommendations, and determine future steps forward.
Thank you, and that's an important point. When coming to us in 2020, one of the key points was the movement away from a phrase related to dictatorial authority and recognizing that abuse of power was more of a moral issue that then could be defined and dealt with similar to how we define and deal with other matters that are stated simply as phrases in our Constitution, but then are in the processes that are followed and with the groups that work within them, we then come to definitions and have understandings of whether that portion of Bylaw 10 has been offended or not. And of course, allegations arise and sometimes charges are laid, and at certain points they go all the way through to the actual finding of guilt, and therefore credential action is taken through different means. So we are wanting to be clear about how this it does provide a phrase in a location within the Constitution that the General Executive was comfortable to move to that, and then from that point on, there is work to be done as Ron has described. So that's some background for you on that. I do want to give you the results of resolutions 14 through 19. Resolution 14, Discipline and Restoration Terminology, 267 in favor, 6 opposed, so that is carried. Resolution 15, non-renewed credentials, in favor 263, opposed 10, so that is carried. Resolution 16, discipline terminology, in favor 267, opposed 6, that is carried. Resolution 17, allegations, in favor were 265, opposed 8, so that is carried. Resolution 18, accused credential holder terminology, in favor 267, opposed 6, That is carried. Resolution number 19, presumption of innocence, in favor 269, opposed 4. That is carried. And even within those resolutions carried, there is some guidance related to other aspects of discipline and restoration that we're discussing. So we come to Resolution 20 to move towards casting a ballot related to it. So James, thank you for coming and reading the whereases of Resolution number 20.
Resolution number 20, causes of disciplinary action, abuse of power or authority. Whereas an assumption of dictatorial authority by a credential holder is a cause of disciplinary action under Bylaw 10.6.2.2 of the General Constitution and bylaws where this cause would be seen as a violation of the principles of servant leadership. And whereas an action of dictatorial authority is understood in Scripture as an abuse of power and authority. And whereas such actions should be considered a violation of biblical mandate rather than a violation of the principles of servant leadership as a cause for disciplinary action, be it resolved that Resolution number 20 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. And my seconders are moving. Okay, that was the second, was it? Okay, thank you. It's moved, seconded. We have responded already with an overview and provided some explanation and responded to some of the questions received. So we will move to now the ballot and your ability to vote on it. The updates have come. And please feel free at this time, and we'll start the clock related to Resolution number 20. And please indicate if you're in favor or opposed, and register your vote. Thank you. While that ballot is open to you to respond, we do want to again highlight some of the ministry focus that you are participating in through our Pentecostal Fellowship. So we will provide a couple feature videos as this vote continues.
Hey pastor, small group leader, or mentor. Students are asking questions like, how do I date as a Christian?
Or questions on practical life skills, like how do I budget?
Or really big life questions like, what is God's purpose for my life?
Or how do I overcome my anxiety? If so, we want to offer you a resource that will help your students prepare for all of that and more. So we'd like to share an amazing discipleship tool called the Life Launch Project.
Yes. Life Launch Project is a series of discipleship videos for high school age students and even those in post-secondary years on topics ranging from finding purpose, managing mental health, and finding community. This amazing tool will help you, as a leader, guide your students through these important questions.
They've been created by our group of experienced campus leaders, young adult pastors, and other experts in these areas. And they're here to share pro tips that are going to propel your students into their new adventure. You can go through the content with them one-on-one or in small groups, and we've even provided you with discipleship resource questions for every video. Mission Canada has designed this resource to make your life easier, giving you a high-quality, professionally produced curriculum to work through with your students.
As your students turn the page from this chapter of their life to the next, there's a lot of new experiences they're going to encounter, some good and some bad. And whether you're going to be on the university or college campus, or in a new city, or in a radically new employment environment, we want to help you help them maximize their transition times in life.
So right now, You're probably sitting there thinking, well, how do I access this amazing content and start leading my students through it? We hear you, and so we have 3 simple steps.
Yeah. First one, go to mentorship.one.
Second one, click Life Launch Project.
Yeah. And third, register and begin watching these incredible videos with your students.
And guess what?
What?
The registration is free, and it only asks for your name and email address. That's it, no strings attached.
Yeah, that's amazing. We hope to fuel the launch of your students in the next chapter of life. Check out Life Launch Project today, because you got this.
Focus on the Family Canada created the Careth Retreats Ministry to offer care and support for pastors, missionaries, and parachurch leaders. Surrounded by the calm of nature, Careth Retreats offers the space to truly experience profound renewal in Christ. This 7-day Ministry Leaders Renewal Retreat offers you personalized care and group instruction to help you reconnect with Christ and rekindle your passion for ministry. Like its biblical namesake, when God called Elijah to the Kerith Ravine, Careth Retreats is a safe place where those who are weary can find a place of rest. With 2 different locations in Alberta and Manitoba, Careth Retreats offers a gracious home environment for you to unwind. In Alberta, Careth Creek is nestled in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies. It's the perfect place to come away and find stillness from the busyness of life. All of our Careth Retreat locations offer private rooms with kitchenettes, private bathrooms, fireplaces, and more. In Manitoba, Careth Pines boasts a rich natural landscape which provides a unique and secluded place to experience renewing rest from life's demands. Enjoy an all-inclusive experience with luxury rooms, delicious and nutritious meals, and let us handle all the cleanup. If you need a break from the demands of ministry, if you're in time of transition or planning a sabbatical, Careth Retreats might be exactly what you're looking for. Find out if Careth Retreats is right for you at carethretreats.ca.
Well, I'm worried about some of you because you start showing a nice retreat location with those nice big beds right in the time frame that we're at in this meeting, and you might all start sawing logs on me. But anyways, thanks for, I'm not sure how our French friends will translate sawing logs. I'm sure there's some phrase. You got one for me? No, they never taught me that when I was taking French in Alberta. So, but anyways, we do again appreciate Focus on the Family Careth Retreats, and they regularly participate with us, and they will be providing a retreat as part of the package of sponsorship in May, and we appreciate that. And Life Launch just is, in a way, a tip of the iceberg of how effective our Serve Campus ministries through Mission Canada have become. It's just, I'm very proud of Brian, John Ingalls, and the rest of the Serve Campus team and the initiatives they're taking on campuses, and Life Launch is a great example of that. We do have the results on Resolution 20, abuse of power or authority, and in favor are 275, opposed 15, so that is carried, and the ongoing good work will take place. We do come to the final multi-resolution ballot. It's very straightforward, and I thank you for giving us this additional time. We didn't have a hard stop communicated. We knew that we would need somewhere in around the 2 to 2.5 hours, and so here we are, but we are very close to the end, friends, so thanks for staying engaged with us. And We will move to James. Thanks for sharing these final 5 resolutions, and those that are inside of the House, let's give a round of applause for James for the good job he's done. I appoint James Schwab as the new voice of the PAOC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may come on down. Sorry.
There you go.
Anyways, resolution number 21, bylaw 10.6.11.4, credential holder support. Whereas a respondent credential holder, as stated in bylaw 10.6.11, disciplinary hearing may wish to bring both a spouse and another credential holder to the disciplinary hearing for support. And whereas the wording of the current bylaw, 10.6.11.4 of the General Constitution and bylaws allows for one of those persons to be present for support. Be it resolved that Resolution 21 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. And it is seconded. And I don't believe any comments or questions have come on related to that, so we can move to Resolution 22.
Resolution number 22, communication of disciplinary hearing verdict. Whereas bylaw 10.6.11.10 addresses the communication of the verdict in the disciplinary hearing process of a credential holder. And whereas the verdict will be one of not guilty or guilty. And whereas there is some redundancy in the wording of this bylaw, be it resolved that Resolution 22 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you. And seconded. And again, we'll move on to Resolution 23.
Resolution 23, reinstated credentials, removal of provisional status. Whereas a credential holder who has had ministerial credentials suspended, who has satisfactorily completed a restoration program, and who has been approved for reinstatement by credentials by the Superintendent's Committee. And whereas the Superintendent's Committee is recommending the removal of the provisional status of a credential holder who has successfully completed a restoration program and has been granted reinstatement of credentials. Be it resolved that Resolution 23 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
And it's seconded. And again, just removing the probationary aspect of reinstated credentials. Resolution 24, reinstatement ineligibility.
Resolution 24, ineligibility for reinstatement of credentials, relocation of bylaw. Whereas the reference to bylaw related to ineligibility of credential reinstatement currently contained in bylaw 10.6.16.2 of the General Constitution and bylaws would fit better under bylaw 10.7, reinstatement of credentials. Be it resolved that Resolution 24 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Right. So no change related to ineligibility, just placing it in a more apropos location. Resolution 25.
Resolution 25, bylaw 10.6.2.1.12, causes of disciplinary action, luring a child. Whereas bylaw 10.6.2 outlines causes of disciplinary action that specifies moral failure of a sexual nature. And whereas sexual conduct unbecoming of a credential holder can include luring a child, which is referenced in the Criminal Code of Canada, section 172.1. And whereas PAOC credential holders hold a position of trust by virtue of their ministerial status, be it resolved that Resolution 25 be approved as presented. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Thank you, James. Seconder. And I just would quickly mention before I take you to the ballot then that there has been the opportunity for, prior to our time together, for questions to be asked and responded to and answers given. I know in this one, for instance, there was some back and forth related to acknowledging that we always do give priority to actions taken under the criminal code by police and therefore put our processes on hold. That's the general practice that we have, and that was explained in a previous conversation. So as we move towards May, I'd encourage you to also look at that opportunity to ask questions, get explanations. There are people from the general executive, from administrators' committees, from some of the working groups that have worked on the resolutions to respond ahead of time and perhaps give the explanation that you would look forward to receiving. And again, there'll be opportunity in May for us to operate as a conference and to also have discussion on the conference floor. So thank you. And so with that background and with resolutions 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 moved and seconded, we will move to casting our ballots. So please refresh your home page or the other means you're finding. The resolutions are there and posted, and we will begin the clock, and please cast your ballots. Well, friends, I've been coming to general conferences since I was a kid. I mean, I was in my 20s, but I was a kid. But I've never seen a selfie taken at the parliamentary table before. I just think this is something that our archivist, Jim Craig, should make sure he gets a copy of that picture, because that'll be right up there with some of the other famous PAOC historical documents. It's just a beautiful thing. So thanks, Victoria. Did you get one of us up here as well? Yeah. Okay, please. You know, we want it side by side in archives. The ballot is continuing, and thanks for participating. Before we wrap up, we will now move to just want to highlight for you what we're looking forward to next month. And so there's a video as we await the results of that last ballot.
Hi friends, Dave Wells, welcoming you to be with us here in Winnipeg for General Conference 2022, May 16th to 18th. We want to encourage you to come and join us. Make sure you're registered and can participate with us in all the great activities that are going to take place here in Winnipeg. Today I'm standing in the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, and this is where our welcome event will take place on May 16th. It's going to be a great evening, first of all, just to get back together, and secondly, to celebrate one of the main themes of our conference. We're talking about beyond the impossible, what we are asked to do as a fellowship of churches and people who love Jesus is to love God, heart, soul, mind, strength, to love our neighbor as ourselves, to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God, and then empowered by the Spirit to go and help people become disciplined followers of Jesus. All of those themes are going to be captured at different points throughout our time together, and we're going to kick it off here at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights as we celebrate that we are called to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. There's going to be opportunities to mix and meet with friends from all across the country and globally, plus conduct some very important business, some of which has been waiting for us for 4 years. So come and join us, make sure you register, and of course there's an online option for you if you're not able to travel to Winnipeg. So from Winnipeg, every blessing. Look forward to seeing you soon.
As we move towards conclusion, once we receive the report of your last ballot, I do want to again speak so very highly of the many people within our fellowship that have reached out to one another. I know they've reached out to Susan and I, they've reached out to many others, and just been the support that we've needed during challenging times to be in leadership. You know, local church pastors that are being encouraged by the right people at the right time, people in district ministries and specialized ministries. It's just so important to know you don't go it alone. It's been a tremendous season of loss for many of us, and when we come back together in May, one of the most important times we'll have is on Tuesday morning for our communion and memorial. And as we talk about the great command to love God, heart, soul, mind, strength, and love neighbors ourselves, we'll recognize that during seasons of loss, to have people reach out to you and show care and love is so important. We currently have 87 credential holders that have passed away in this biennial. It's by far the most we've ever witnessed. And of course, so many dear pastors and colleagues, some who have served us so well at national and international leadership levels. And so we want to show due honor. And when we do come back together, it will be nice to be together. I know the Manitoba Northwestern Ontario District felt that. But as you remember, 87 credentialed people that have gone to be with Jesus over this last biennial. It's just very sobering. And so we want to have a special time right from the welcoming on the Monday through the Tuesday and that time of memorial and communion and prayer. And our international guests are going to bless us, the Ballots. These are just stellar people. They live the life, they plant churches, they're about mission, but they live it out, and really look forward to being with Glenn and Sophia. They are colleagues and friends and very trustworthy. And one of our Canadian treasures is our friend Shayla Visser. She's Vice President of Alpha International. She's engaged internationally, but so strongly nationally. She's a mentor for so many in ministry, and she's a woman on mission, and we need that encouragement. So yeah, we just look forward to having you either on site here in Winnipeg or online with us as we engage this. So with that said, it's time to receive the report of the last ballot that we will cast today. Credential holders support Resolution 21, 264 for, 22 were opposed. Resolution 20, so it is carried. Resolution 22, hearing of verdict, 263 in favor, 1 opposed. Resolution 23, reinstated credentials, in favor 262, opposed 2. And Resolution 24, reinstatement ineligibility, 261 in favor, opposed 2, so that is carried. And finally, Resolution 25, defining luring a child, in favor 260, opposed 3, so that is carried. Thank you for your good work as a gathering of voters. Thank you for those who joined us. Some as lay delegates, and we appreciate you doing that on a Thursday afternoon or late morning, depending on where you're located. Some of our international friends, we're so glad you were able to participate with us, and we look forward to even greater international participation in May. We're now going to move to closing prayer, and then we will adjourn by logging off of this meeting, but I'm going to ask you to stand wherever you are, whether in the house here or further afield, and our friend Murray Cornelius is going to lead us in a prayer of blessing and benediction, and then we'll adjourn by disconnecting.
Father, we're grateful for the privilege of being part of a fellowship of fellow like-minded followers of Jesus who have a passion for not only our own nation, but for the world. And as we've considered the business that we have to do together, we thank you for the presence of your Spirit. And we pray that in the remainder of our conference later in May, that we will really have a great experience with you, and we will be empowered by you for that which you've called us to do and to be. So Lord, we just commit ourselves in humble submission to you and ask your grace and blessing on everyone who's participated today, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in with us at this special business meeting of our General Conference. And as Pastor Dave said, May 16th to 18th, we're really excited to see so many of you in person there. Starting off with the Canadian Museum for Human Rights on Monday the 16th. And we are working hard at having an online experience for you so you can actually get an online tour of the museum. And so please watch for that as more information will come out as it relates to how to participate in that welcome event. You can still register for General Conference and in person and online, and we're looking forward to seeing so many of you in Winnipeg. It's been 4 years, can you believe it, 4 years since we've been together, so we're really excited to come to this city, to be a blessing to this city, and by faith, pack your sunscreen and bug spray, because we're believing all the snow will be gone and it'll be sunny days. We're so excited to be seeing you and can't wait to all be together, both here in person and online on May 16th to 18th. God bless you, and thanks so much for sticking with us throughout this business session.